How many suspected wells do we have on the reserve that are open that need to be tended to?
Rod, do you want to answer?
Yes. So this project, there was a study in 1999 by Conestoga and Rovers. There were over 200 abandoned wells that were identified. So this phase of the relaunch of this project will try to identify the locations using modern day georeference points.
And just to follow up, if I could, Mark. Do most people, Rod, know that they have these open wells, abandoned wells on their property? And how would they find out?
Our sense is no. There have been instances over the decades where someone's building a new home or doing some activity on their property and they come across bubbles coming out of the ground. And so most of these wells were drilled in the 1930s and 40s. And so the well steel casing has long been removed. And so that's part of the problem, is to try to locate where they are. We do have, so there have been instances that have come up, and I think in a few instances, the Six Nations Fire Department has been dispatched to try to ensure that there's no health and safety issue associated with these. But we do know, based on some of the earlier maps, that there are infrastructure, like there's buildings in close proximity, in some cases over top of some of these wells. And so that's the priority, to try to identify the location of them.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Rod, for your responses there. Looking to any further questions or comments?
Chief?
Kerry.
Yeah, maybe Rod can answer this. How did they close those wells up? Did they just fill them with cement, or what did they do?
Yeah, so the most recent ones there was a subcontractor that was retained, and they fill them with cement and with bentonite. I know that the use of bentonite has come up with plugging some of the water wells. So we just, for council's information, we have reached out to Environment Canada and to Health Canada, or Indigenous Service Canada. There was a concern about the use of bentonite. It's that substance that when water's added, it expands, and so that's how they seal and plug them. At this stage, there's no indication that there's been any information coming forward to suggest that they have since changed the rules about the use of this product. There was a concern that it might have some kind of chemical compound that could leach into the groundwater and have some human health effects, but so far there's no indication along those lines.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you for those responses. Further questions, comments? Okay, seeing or hearing no more further questions or comments, so I'll at this point look to a mover and seconder to the motion.
Move.
Moved by Nathan, seconder. Second by Audrey. Further questions or comments? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion is carried. Motion to waive second reading. Moved by Nathan, second by Audrey to waive second reading. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion is carried. Okay, Councilor, we're moving right along here to the next item on the agenda. Thank you again, Rod, for joining, and Michelle for the further background to that item. The next piece is health services in relation to the Iroquois Lodge. I believe we have Janet Gasparelli on the line to give us a background to this motion.
I don't have the briefing note in front of me, but it is just a request to waive the need for an NSF charge for resident accommodation costs.
Okay, thank you. It seems pretty straightforward. Further questions, comments to this motion? Helen,
Yeah, so if a resident shows non-sufficient funds, what do you do?
There's a process for we would work with the residents to just get the payment. I mean, it could just be a question of not having the funds in the account when the check is cashed. There's a process that we would follow to seek payment.
So you don't let it get really high where they owe a lot of money.
I believe you cannot evict anybody in long-term care, so it can get high. I can't speak to what the current circumstances are right now in our home in terms of any other years, but I could find out if you wanted to know.
Well, I think it's important. Because didn't we have issues before with people owing lots of money?
yeah,
My
in fact,
other question is, the majority of people, I'm assuming, that are in the lodge are getting the old age pension. So how could they have not sufficient funds if they're getting the old age pension?
So everybody's financial situation is going to be different, and typically they may need the funds that if somebody's on what's the word I'm looking for, like an income that doesn't change, they just get like age or whatever regularly. Sometimes they need to pay more than what they get. And so sometimes family members are helping, or if they want a private room versus a shared room, that kind of thing. So there's lots of different variables.
All right.
okay, thanks, Janet, for those. I have a number of hands being raised. I have Michelle in queue next.
Okay, so Janet, my first question is this a huge issue? And then if we're looking at waiving the funds, then shouldn't the policy just come to us? Because the policy then is the issue, right? So wouldn't we have to make that amendment
To the policy itself. That's a good point. I don't believe it's in the policy, so that would be a next step for sure. I don't know how frequently it happens. I can't speak to that, but I can find out.
I think it happens more than not, right? Because we're dealing with a few cases right now. However, it's not the resident's issue, it's the payer, right? So I there's a little bit more work that needs to go into this, and if it could be brought back in a few weeks.
Yeah, I think just to Michelle's point on the policy piece in terms of the process, I think that's an important step. And just to as well, before I go over to Hazel, Janet, I'm wondering what happens when we manage as the administrator to some of the accounts. Like, I think part of the problem at times in the past is it fell on us as the administrator for some of the accounts as to why certain bills or certain things weren't getting paid in a timely manner type of deal. So wondering what's the process when, say, for example, it's us as the administrator managing the accounts of some of the residents. So again, I think those this is definitely a straightforward motion. However, just to those points raised by Michelle and as well from myself in terms of us managing some of the residents, I think that also needs to be researched further just on those items. Hazel?
Yes, I have a question in regards to when a resident is admitted to the lodge, don't they predetermine what the rate is for that individual? And then I know their monthly pensions would have an automatic withdrawal to cover the cost. So I guess what I'm wondering is how it could fluctuate to the point where they'd end up with NSF funds.
So I would say that the NSF charge is just that there isn't any money in the account that the check is coming from. So people can have multiple accounts. So maybe they haven't transferred money over. Maybe they have somebody who takes care of their money and hasn't transferred the money over. So it doesn't necessarily mean they don't have the money, although it could also mean that. And for automatic withdrawals for payment, like somebody has to consent to having that set up, like just for the automatic payments. And so it's possible that some people don't want to do that. So there can be lots of different scenarios. But I can definitely, so like what I'm hearing is you just want just more details about, what happens when people don't pay, what's the process, looking at updating the policy in addition to just this request.
So,
Yeah, I think those are good pieces to further follow up. Helen, and then back over to Michelle.
yeah, I kind of would like to know the whole process. Like,
Mhm.
I thought if I went to the lodge, I would automatically have to give you guys my old age check. You would take out my I don't know what it's called. Say rent. You would take out my rent from that check. But you're saying to me that that's not how it works. Some people have other people looking after their money. So if there's not sufficient funds, that would mean the other people aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're not using the money for the person in the lodge. They're probably using the money for themselves, maybe.
Mhm.
I think I would like to know this whole process because I have an issue with seemingly to be just saying, okay, if they got insufficient funds, we're just gonna not look at it. Because they should have sufficient funds. They shouldn't be in there, I guess. I thought there's certain fees that people have to pay, certain arrangements that you have to make go in there in terms of paying these fees. At least this is what I thought.
Yeah, we're not saying that so the request is just that we don't charge the NSF charge. It's not saying like, oh, if you don't pay, like we just don't worry about it. It just means they just don't get charged for it.
But
no matter what, we're always working on trying to catch people up on any arrears.
well, my concern is non-sufficient funds. If the family's looking after the money, they should be making sure the money's there to pay for the person to be in the lodge. So I'm not so worried about waiving the fees. I'm worried about the non-sufficient funds to begin with. I know over the years we've ran into so many issues with people coming to find out people owed thousands of dollars because nobody was looking into why they weren't paying or anything like that. So
Yeah, I think
that's my concern is the whole process of people paying and how it works and at least what I thought it was like.
Yeah, I agree with Helen. Just on the basis of or Janet that really we should be always looking to make sure all of our residents are in a stable financial position. So I'm wondering if this yes, this is this is just only for charges on the NSF, but I think to Helen's point, we should be looking at the bigger picture to make sure that all of our residents don't run into any type of financial burdens. I think that's something that yes, we're not looking to we're just looking at the charges, but I agree with Helen to the overall bigger pictures. In the past, to the issues that we have had come to the table, it was really I would say at times a little sad to see or hear that our residents are in this type of errors within our own lodge, so I'm just wondering maybe if there's opportunity, because I know, say for example, one example is ISK, for example, and them potentially again going back to the administrative part, that say the resident is under the executor through ISK. There's this, I think, like you say, there's so many variables, right,
Mhm.
to this whole issue. But I agree. I would rather see the whole bigger picture attached with the necessary policy changes, and then go from there.
Yep.
Michelle?
Yeah, can we just look at the last 5 years, the trend of the last 5 years in arrears? But also, Janet, you just flaked something. There is no policy. Is that what you said? So then how is this here? So just if that can be all clear, I'll be good.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a really good point as well. Thanks for that, Michelle. Okay, so what I'm hearing, engaging just by the conversation, Janet, is this item needs a little bit more work.
Yep.
So if we can highlight the pieces that have been listed, and then we'll look to bring this item back for final approval with the necessary attachments.
So what I'm hearing is just a clearer idea of what the process is when there are arrears, and what the history of the last 5 years related to arrears, and updates to policy. Those are the three things.
Yes.
picked up. Okay.
Yes, those are all great. Further questions, comments? Is there any
I have one.
opposition? Audrey?
Yeah, I'd like to know what kind of a monitoring process you have and set in place so that stops all of this from happening. Is there somebody who's cross-checking to make sure that the bills are being paid on time? Because I know of an incident where a person owed $9,000. Like, that's an awful lot for one of our beloved seniors to have to go and then find money to pay that back. So we shouldn't be putting our most valuable people at a disadvantage, especially financially. They have enough to worry about. And in the briefing, it already talks about the communication with accounts receivable so they can add it to their procedures. So it seems like they do have procedures in place. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. I think we lost a few people here. But I do agree with you, Audrey. I think that's a good piece in terms of the monitoring part, and hopefully can be seen as part of the overall process as well. When Janet does those due diligent pieces. Sorry, I think I'm just getting a message that there was a power switch at the building, which is why you'll probably see majority of. Not sure if Sherry Lynn is impacted or not.
Chief, there's Hazel and Becky were at the council chambers, and I just have mine on. So, but they're here.
Okay, thanks, Sherry Lynn. I'm just gonna give it just a minute. If we could just pause really quickly, council. I just want to make sure our recording secretary is back in the room.
The list that listed 21 participants, now there's only 11.
Exactly, yeah. So could we just give 1 second to get those rejoined?
Becky, do you want to talk? Becky's trying to get in, but she's here listening. I got it on high. So.
Okay, thanks. Okay, thanks, Sherry Lynn. As long as we have our recording
Are
secretary.
you okay, Becky? Okay. Can they keep going? Beck?
Sherry Lynn, does Becky want me to record to the cloud so she has the recording? Because it's not recording anymore.
Yeah, that would be good, Caitlin.
Yeah. Yeah, she said yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Sherry Lynn. Looks like we're getting people signed back in. Okay, so just to pick up where we left off, Thanks, Janet. So as we experience that 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 shut off, um, Counselor Audrey Janet was bringing up the monitoring piece onto the account. So that I think that fits right in line with what we're talking about as well of the overall process in terms of the monitoring piece. So there's a few items, Janet, I think council would like to get more information on. What I'm hearing is that we're going to defer this item until those other pieces are brought back.
No problem.
Okay, thank you so much, Janet. If there's no further questions or comments, council, I'm going to move right along to the next item, which is in relation to the Santa Claus parade. And I'm actually glad this is here on this piece. I know Michelle can speak to this further. Michelle?
Yeah, so I wanted to declare a conflict because I'll speak to this today. So as I mentioned probably last year, the Santa Claus parade is coming back, and so the committee couldn't be here today. But I think everybody knows that the community-minded Spirits in Action headed by the Paulus family have been driving the parade for over 25 years. And so for the last 10 years, I've helped them out. And we've actually always gone to the Six Nations Gaming Commission, who's funded through the bingo. Unfortunately, there's no funds there this year. So they've come to council to pay for the expenses. That 6,500 is the highest. If advertising isn't as high as we predicted, it will definitely come down. But you'll see in the budget that the funds go towards floats, purchasing candy, Santa Claus, and new signage.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Michelle. And I was so glad to see that they finally got a new Santa Claus outfit. Because the last few parades, Santa Claus was looking a little sad. So it's really nice to see that make some changes. I just want just really quickly before I go over to Nathan, I'm just wondering, we have a whole, it's been on my mind for some time in terms of really trying to beef up our community events and our community pieces to the event. So I'm just wondering, we do a lot of business with a number of different vendors. Is it a possibility? And I'm wondering maybe if Wayne can assist of, like say for example, Pepsi and all of our vending, and you see all of the bigger companies, really putting in nice events and local, parades and so forth. I'm wondering if we can look to see who are our, like say, top 10 vendors and put a request on behalf of the committee and to say, can you please put a float into our parade, or just because again we do a number of business with different vendors, and I think it's the least that they can do to come and help support some of our local events. So I just wanted to bring, as soon as I seen this item, I was like, first glad Santa Claus is getting a new outfit. And then second is looking at the vendors. So just wanted to put that on the floor. Nathan, and then over to Greg.
Actually, 100% agree with you. No questions. I'll move this.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that, Nathan. It's moved by Nathan. Is there a seconder? Second by Sherry Lynn. Further questions, comments? Over to you, Greg.
Yes, I agree with you, Chief. For example, when my sister was running the Red Indian, she was rated as the highest vendor of Pepsi products in Ontario. So you're right. These companies do benefit from us quite a bit, and I think it would be wise to seek out some of these companies to help out. I'm sure they would. That was just my comment.
Totally agree, and thanks for that, Greg. Sherry Lynn.
What's the date on it?
November 19th, 10
Sorry.
a.m.
November 19th?
leaving from Speedway, and Glenn's been a huge supporter all these years.
So my next question is, are all the departments putting in a float? And is council putting in a float?
That's a really good point, and I think that's as another, like, we should be able to have like 20-30 floats in that parade, maybe even more, just based upon the vendors, based upon our departments, based upon our own. I think it'd be nice to even see a nice council float. So maybe perhaps we could start to work on that as a team, and show really across the board. So maybe if we could,
And I will say, health, social, fires there, and public works, they have to close the roads in partnership with the police. So we do have a lot, I feel, of our big departments participating annually. So yeah, if we did a council float, that would be perfect.
Throw eggs at us.
Come on, Helen.
yeah, so we
Well,
could
they threw pies at us on the weekend.
yeah, they can hold off on the pies, and we'll switch over. Okay, I think this is really good. If we can make note that on Darren's part of the administrative, I mean, I do understand and do recognize our departments that have been also, a part of the Santa Claus parade for the number of years. I think we could do a little bit better, and maybe perhaps Michelle will work on off the line in getting a council float submitted. And then also look to a vendor list and reach out to those vendors so that we can get more floats involved. So it's moved by Nathan. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Sherry Lynn. And again, Michelle has declared conflict due to her involvement with the committee. So I'll look to any further questions or comments. Okay, seeing or hearing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion is carried. Motion to waive second reading. Moved by Sherry Lynn, seconder. Second by Greg. To waive second reading, all in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion is carried. Okay, that does complete our session for general finance this today. I will now look to a motion to adjourn. Moved by Sherry Lynn, seconder. Seconder to adjourn, moved or second by Audrey. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion is carried. Thank you to all for joining us for general finance. Again, we had a quick, short agenda. I will look to our secretary to get us into our next session. Caitlin, I see your hand raised.
Rebecca, can you please give me host so I can end the live stream?
Thanks for that, Caitlin and Becky. Okay, council, just give us a minute to switch over. I'm not sure if there's any, I gotta pull up the in-camera agenda.